German expat rejects acting Prime Minister Prayut Chan and also voiced disapproval for General Prayut in silent protests with a portrait picture in red X. The German wanted to show his rejection of the new government acting leader who assumed the role on August 24 after Thailand's Prime Minister, since 2014, General Prayut Chan ocha was suspended from duties by the Constitutional Court over a challenge to his tenure on the basis of a constitutional term limit. However, reporters who interviewed the German political activist on Thursday quickly learned that his opposition is not just aimed at General Prayut but also at his fellow brother-in-arms General Prayut, who took power in Thailand in 2014 following the coup d'état in May of that year, which ousted the democratically elected Pheu Thai government. Residents in Rayong had noticed the tall German making his silent protest on the main Sukhumvit road at different points for up to 30 minutes at a time this week before getting into a car and driving off. Expat has been in Thailand for 8 years, says he pities the Thai people and is willing to risk losing his visa to stay in the country by protesting. On Thursday, he was discovered wearing a white t-shirt, black shorts, blue shoes and dark sunglasses when accosted by reporters. He said he was carrying out his private and silent protest because he felt sorry for the people of Thailand and wanted to help. The German man said he was aware that his actions could have consequences, including the possibility of losing his visa and being forced to return to Germany, but he was willing to take that risk. His Thai wife told reporters that he is a man who is very interested in politics and was acting with a good heart toward the Thai people, who he feels are more intimidated about speaking out against the government than any expat. Traveled to Bangkok this week to attend planned protests against the leadership of the government in the capital called by Ratchaporn Prompan of the UDD. The couple planned to be in Bangkok on Saturday, 3 September for a weekend of protests led by United Front for Democracy Against Dictatorship, UDD, Chairman Ratchaporn Prompan, who is currently mobilizing protest activity against the key military figures who took part in the 2014 coup in Thailand and who are still integral to the government which was elected to office under the 2017 constitution in Thailand in 2019, headed by General Prayut. Mr. Moritz is understood to have lived in Thailand for the last 8 years. On Thursday night he traveled with his wife to Bangkok to stay in a condominium unit in the city after being warned by police officers who visited him in Rayong to talk about his actions in criticizing the government. Police officers who came to his home were extremely polite and civil, but the message was clear: risks losing his visa if this sort of activity continues. The German described the officers who arrived at his home as extremely polite and civil, but their message was clear. If he continues with his protest activity at this time, he will likely face difficulties having his visa to reside in Thailand renewed. The situation is quite similar to another expat, then 47-year-old Yan Eric Marchal, who in 2019 produced a humorous video parodying Prime Minister Prayut Chan that went viral with millions of views. He was similarly visited at home by plainclothes policemen who warned him about his behavior and demanded an apology. French expat government critic deported after being denied entry into Thailand via Phuket on Saturday. French man's deportation shock is a wake-up call to all foreigners in Thailand using social media. However, despite an earlier resolution to the contrary, the French man continued to become embroiled in controversy by coming out in support of the violent protests in Bangkok in October 2020 with highly provocative statements which may have breached the law. Blacklisted, French man's fate ultimately sealed last November when he was deported on arrival at Suvarnabhumi Airport in Bangkok to visit his family. After this, he was told his visa was being revoked. German claims he was warned off by police from pursuing his political protests against acting PM. A German man living in Thailand with a Thai wife staged numerous silent protests this week in Rayong but was warned off by police officers on Thursday who visited his home. His case is similar to that of Frenchman Yan Eric Marchal, who hit the headlines in 2019 with a viral video targeting Prime Minister Prayut Chan. Mr. Marchal, despite similar cautions and promises to discontinue his activities, remained controversial with numerous online incidents and outbursts against the government and higher authorities. He was ultimately deported and blacklisted from Thailand. A German man, on Friday, claimed he had been given a warning by Thai police officers not to continue his silent protest activities seen this week in Rayong, in which he targeted the acting Prime Minister Prayut Chan. Moritz told reporters that he had apologized to the officials concerned for his actions and would instead channel his political opinions into his art. Nonetheless, it is understood that the German and his Thai wife are planning to participate in this weekend's protests against the government's leadership being organized by Red Shirt leader Ratchaporn Prompan in Bangkok. Moritzvo in the framed portrait of acting Prime Minister Prayut Chan, which he used to stage a number of silent protests during the week in Rayong. The 35-year-old told reporters on Friday that he received a visit from local police officers who checked his documentation. The German national says he was told that if he continued such activities, he ran the risk of losing his visa. A 35-year-old German man has revealed that he was visited by the Royal Thai Police on Thursday afternoon after news broke of his silent protest against the Thai government in Rayong province. Over the last 3 or 4 days, up to Thursday, Mr. Moritzvo had appeared and was noticed by bemused standers-by at intersections on the Sukhumvit Road in the urban center or Rayong holding a framed picture portrait of current acting Prime Minister Prayut Chan with a red X mark taped across it. Mr. Marchal had an extremely successful TikTok site with over 600,000 followers. The situation subsequently was described as a misunderstanding by Immigration Bureau officers before Mr. Marchal's case ultimately came to head in November last year when he was refused entry into Thailand at Phuket Airport, taken into custody and subsequently deported from the kingdom. He had traveled to Thailand to visit his family knowing the situation regarding his immigration status was already uncertain. German has apologized and plans to focus on art. A more cautious Mr. Moritz, on Friday, revealed that he had already offered an apology to the police officer who visited his home even though he insisted that he had a private right to protest. Police officers offered their advice to the German while asking to inspect his documents and confirm his visa status. The slightly chastened expat told reporters that he may in future confine his political expression to his art and his work much in a similar way to Marchal suggested after the furor in 2019 but whose outburst against authorities in 2020 ultimately led to his visa being revoked and him being blacklisted from the kingdom.